All right, welcome back for another episode of the Bully Pulpit. I'm by myself today, and I'm wearing my red shirt. Don't take that as a political statement because it's not. Although I do think I wear this shirt a lot. It must be one of my favorites. Chris is out today. He texted me. He said, I have an emergency. I'm going to have to ask what the emergency was. And as we look at the news, it could be any number of things. I don't think, considering his experience is more on the election side, that it has anything to do with some of the things that we're going to talk about, like AKA the bridge in Baltimore. But he did say, hey, can't make it today. Had an emergency pop up. Of course, he didn't say it was a work emergency. I don't think so. It could be any number of things. If it's a work thing, we'll have to get the inside scoop so we know where to place our who to put on our team if that's going to make any changes. Again, this is the Bully Pulpit. I am one of your hosts, Justin Schoenfelder, the founder and CEO of Fantasy Elect, where we are bringing the fantasy sports experience to politics. That's what this show is also about, by the way. I don't know if we've ever really gotten into the ethos of this show, but this is all about politics as sports analysis. How do we analyze what's happening in elections and politics like we would analyze a sports game? Who's performing? Who isn't? Maybe that way we can kind of predict the future, kind of understand what's going to happen in the future, and also be prepared for it and change the way we view the sport of politics. So let's jump right in. I am going to be adding some features, a little bit better production value. I understand that we have kind of about an hour long every time, so we'll have some timestamps in the future. Intro, outro. We're gonna up our game here. Upping the game is kind of a funny topic because that will cover part of what we're going to cover here in a minute. First, let's get into the serious, sad news. Let's get it out of the way. For anybody who didn't hear this week, Joe Lieberman has died. The longtime senator and one-time VP candidate, almost two-time VP candidate. I believe there was some talk about him running as the running mate with John McCain. That could have been interesting. But one-time vice presidential candidate with Al Gore in 2000 and the longtime senator from Connecticut. He's passed away. And all of the conversation around Joe Lieberman this week has been around his maybe independence, right? And non-partisanship. I don't know if that's right. Maybe bipartisanship, and I don't know if that's right either. Again, he ran on the Democratic ticket in 2000 and in 2008 was strongly considered and did not say he wouldn't take it, seemed open to the possibility of taking it for the Republican ticket. So what is that? Is that bipartisanship? Is that nonpartisanship? Is that independence? Or is that, opportunism? He saw an opportunity. I don't know. And maybe none of those are qualitatively, or none of those are better than any of the other. When I think of nonpartisanship, though, I think of someone who has, who doesn't stand with a party, doesn't align themselves with something. That wasn't Joe Lieberman, right? And there's a longtime Democrat. It wasn't until the end of his career that he lost in a primary challenge to another Democrat, changed to an independent, and won in the general as an independent. But even then, maybe it was more of an evolution of who the person was. I don't know. But I think the commentary is missing something there. Doesn't really, for our purposes, doesn't really change anything. We look at the current game being played rather than the players of the past. But I do think there's something interesting here, which is Kyrsten Sinema almost went down the same road as Joe Lieberman, right? So I think she felt she couldn't win a challenge from the left. She felt that she would lose in the Democratic primary. So a few months ago, about a year maybe, she aligned herself as an independent, but mostly caucused and supported Democratic positions or Democrat positions. And she, I think, if she was in a position to win, she would have stayed in the race and would have won as an independent in Arizona. I don't know that makes her nonpartisan or bipartisan. I think it is an analysis of where she can win. This goes back to what we've said many times, and I think you've heard Chris and I talk about, which is no one is really afraid of losing a general election anymore. The battle lines are drawn. We are in, trench warfare, World War I at this stage. Very little movement. Where you are going to lose your seat as an incumbent is a primary challenger to your further extreme end. If you are in certainly if you're in a more extreme district, it's a little bit different as a senator because states tend to be more diverse than districts. Districts can be hyper concentrated and maybe one philosophical belief or another, but the states can be more general. So it makes it a bit more difficult, but some states are kind of well known to go one way or the other. It was interesting, actually. If you look at California recently with Adam Schiff, he's way more moderate, in my opinion, anyway, than Katie. I want to say Katie Hobbs, but she's in Arizona. Katie Porter. So she was to the left, and I think she could have won that, by the way, but for a couple of things. The other woman that was running up from Sacramento, I believe, I can't remember her name right now. She also seemed like a really strong candidate. They split the vote, and money made a huge difference. So raising the money and getting the support that Adam Schiff was able to build, he was able to bankroll the Republican on that side and basically get rid of his biggest challenger, which was Katie Porter. So those things combined, they demonstrate where the real weakness for Adam Schiff was, which was his primary to his left as a Democrat. I think you could probably say some of the same things on the right, and not to mind right now. I'm not necessarily thinking. An example of this might also be, you look at certain gubernatorial races or things like that, where you have very solid party control of the state. They're moving further and further right in order to capture that, or further and further left, depending. So, Joe Lieberman, I don't know that there's anybody else left. There might be some people left, certainly, that are of that same kind of middle, center left, center right. They want to negotiate. They want to get things done. They want to compromise. They want to do certain things. But more and more, we don't want that as citizens. Doesn't make for winner take all, and we like winner take all, right? So I guess condolences to Joe Lieberman. I wonder what the world would have looked like. It would be interesting to know what the world would have looked like if A, he had been the vice president under Al Gore and Al Gore was president. I wonder what that world would have looked like. B, he lost, was selected to be vice president for McCain, and they beat Obama in 2008. Wonder what that world would have looked like. It's, sometimes I get so full of disappointment that I can't know all of the potentialities that would have come to fruition. All of the possibilities that never were. By the way, I'm not longing for any of those to happen, but just super curious what the world would look like. I will also add, we just right before coming on to record this, I saw on the X, I don't really know how to refer to it, on Twitter, I saw Chappie Sinclair died. And if you don't know who that is, fuck you, you're too young, and that's disappointing. Or you just don't appreciate 80s like rah USA, freaking like especially aviation. Come on, Chappie Sinclair, Iron Eagle, He's the man. Louis Gossett Jr. passed away. Last night, sometime, I got the news just before recording this on Friday, the 29th of March. So, been in a lot of movies. The first Black gentleman to win supporting actor Oscar, broke that barrier. Like, interesting. I mean, obviously contributed to moving the world forward in some ways, and did it through his art. That's cool. I support that. Don't know what he was like as a person. I could have been a real shitbag. I have no idea. I'm not making any statements here. Please don't yell at me like he was a horrible person. I have no idea. I do know he was consequential in his art. That's awesome. So he passed away. So condolences to his family as well. Now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about. Well, it's funny. I'm going to rearrange what I wrote down here because I feel like that is a really interesting intro into somebody else's political death. And that's RFK Jr., in my opinion, with his VP pick. Now, listen, again, I don't know Miss Shanahan. I don't know her. I have nothing bad to say about her. But I also don't see what. Interesting, though, I am thinking about what Chris said in one of our previous sessions where he said he's going to pick someone with money. She does have money. She has Sergei's money. But it can't just be that, can it? I mean, there are wealthy people. I mean, even wealthier than her. Let's say I read somewhere that she had asked for like $1 billion in the divorce settlement from Sergey Brin, one of the co-founders of Google. And that they did a private like arbitration and nobody knows how much she got. I don't know if that's true. Somebody knows, IRS, I assume, but somebody knows how much she got. Whatever. I don't know how much she got. She's not even the wealthiest of people that he could have picked, I don't think. Like, there are wealthier people. There are wealthier people that maybe have been exposed to the political game longer. It's not even about her age. I mean, I'm not the oldest person. I'm older than her, but I don't think you need to be a certain age necessarily, but I think you need to have an experience in politics. Otherwise, you're going to get eaten alive. It's for your own safety, really. It's not for anything else. I don't know for sure that older politicians or more experienced politicians are better statesmen. I don't know that to be the case. But what I do know is that they know how to navigate a system that exists. So it's interesting. I think everything about RFK is really just a bit of a nihilist. It's as if we want to burn an entire system down. On the right, MAGA wants to burn the entire system down and go back to something else, which was just the system as a younger age, really. If you liked where we were before and you want to go back to it, it's the same system. What's changed? If anything, it's gotten a little less systemy because we have kind of gotten more nihilistic. That doesn't mean that I agree with how entrenched many parts of the system are, but I don't see the benefit of burning it down. Also, by the way, let me just say about RFK, I watched a video of his and he said that everything has suddenly turned horrible in America in the last 5 years. What an arbitrary number to select. 5 years? Things are cumulative. Life is cumulative. Things have gotten horrible now. I mean, I would assume the people who are supporting RFK are, if you're against the system, you're likely against the Patriot Act. Well, that was 24 years ago. So 23 years ago. So it isn't like it's a new occurrence, right? And by the way, the big issue of vaccines, those things have been around for a fucking long time. So when did things get horrible in this country, Mr. RFK? I also, by the way, I will say, I saw somebody tweeted something that RFK is the epitome of a Nepo baby. They hate the benefits of the system while being a beneficiary of the system, right? It's an interesting perspective. All of that to say, all that is just groundwork for saying, what does this get him electorally? She doesn't come with any ground game support, right? I mean, I think he would have been better off choosing a Texas billionaire who's deeply embedded in Texas state politics. Or maybe I choose Texas because that's where I am right now, but find a state that's kind of a toss-up between Biden and Trump. For instance, Michigan, that's a toss-up state. Find a Democrat or a Republican billionaire who isn't happy with either one of those and has aspirations for a political future in Michigan, who's a Michigander, and go to them and say, run on the ticket. The guy who started a Rocket Mortgage, he's in Detroit. That fucking guy has more money than this woman. And he's been involved in kind of building and being part of grassroots. If you look at like his VC firm, it's heavily involved in Detroit politics. And I don't know about heavily, but he's involved in Detroit politics. He's involved in Michigan State. He gets that game. He gets the ground aspect of it. None of this makes sense to me when it comes to fundraising. She has money. She's not going to write an unlimited amount. She wants that money. If she writes $100 million, that's not going to do it for you. I mean, we're going to talk about Joe Biden. Joe Biden raised $26 million last night, one day. She might write one check for $100 million. Maybe. It's a big maybe, by the way. Okay. We've heard Chris talk on the show that Biden's going to have $1 billion. What does $100 million get you? That's a tenth of the money. So what does that get you? I think you would have been better off to find somebody that would have helped you raise a shit ton of money. Honestly, if you could convince Nikki Haley to run, you could get some of that Koch network money maybe, right? Because they want Trump to lose more than they want Biden to lose, more than they want to win even. What they want is, I think, Trump to lose because it's hurting them. So what better way to hurt Trump than to put Nikki Haley on the ticket, raise a shit ton of Koch money, and then be on the ballot and run center right? Or just center if that's what you think. But I think that he has a nice center right following. However, Ms. Shanahan may actually pull from the center left as well. I think what we really need to learn now is that the Biden campaign will likely see RFK as a big threat now. And maybe this was always the point. Maybe RFK running as a Democrat was always a false flag. Maybe he actually doesn't want to run as a Democrat. Maybe what he really wants is to burn it down for whatever reason. If you look at the way he talks about his family and stuff, he may have a score to settle. I have no idea. The point being, though, is that that's the way this game is being played. This game is being played at the ground game, at the fundraising, polling, what's happening, who's raising money, who's spending it, and who's winning at the ground game level. If you don't have a national network, you need to look at the ground game network in each state. She doesn't get you any of that, but she does position you to take some of that center left, right? And maybe also it makes him seem like he's center left friendly, interestingly enough, although that could piss some people off if he hurts Biden. So I heard, I don't think it was Sager and Crystal on Breaking Points. I think it was Ryan and the other woman, the blonde woman. I think it was her that said this pick was so he's still accepted in liberal circles to dinner parties. That might be true. But I do think that this was an acknowledgement that he's already dead in the water as a candidate. He has no intention of actually winning the race. Of course he's not going to win. Anybody could tell you he's not going to win the race. I could go find somebody in Timbuktu right now and say, who's going to win the presidential race in the United States? And they're not going to say RFK. So those are 3 obituaries that I've just written today or just commented on today. I do think also political obituaries are kind of busy today. I saw a post or a video from Glenn Youngkin in Virginia explaining why he vetoed legalizing marijuana in Virginia. I think it was retail marijuana. I should have looked it up. I don't know the status of medical marijuana in Virginia, but I did, however, look up how many Virginians approve of retail marijuana. 60% approve of retail marijuana in Virginia. Now, this is below the threshold that Chris has talked about before, which is the 80%. 80% of the people want something. You're not doing yourself any favor at all by not giving it to them. So then the question is 60% enough to matter for Glenn Youngkin? Is this going to affect his listen, Glenn Youngkin has bigger ambitions. Let's not fool ourselves. I think he's going to run for president in 28. I think it's going to be a very crowded 28. Republican and Democrat is going to be a very interesting election cycle. But I don't think we're in a place anymore where the electorate wants marijuana to be illegal. Now, maybe they don't want it to be legal. I'll accept that. Maybe they just want it to be decriminalized. I've heard that before, and that makes sense. And by the way, I don't know that I'm a big supporter of marijuana, but I certainly think that what we have been doing for the last 40 years doesn't work. So do something different. But it passed the legislature, it passed the Senate, and he vetoed it. He put himself on an island of one. And I don't know why he put himself on an island of one for something that had 60% approval in his state. I mean, it's one thing to be on an island of one when it's an unpopular thing, or it's even closer if it's 50-50, right? You certainly don't want to be on an island of one when it's 80%. But at 60%, what is the political upside? What does it get him? That's my question. Does it get him money? From whom? Maybe law enforcement? I have no idea. Trial lawyers? Who? I can't assume it get maybe from the tobacco industry in Virginia. Maybe the alcohol industry. I don't know. Who is going to now be who is going to approve of this veto that is politically beneficial to him? And listen, if anybody out here says to me, maybe he did it on principle, stop being delusional. Okay? None of it is principle. I guarantee you, by the way, if it were to be a 90% approval in his state and 90% national, I don't think he would do this. So I think he made a calculation that nationally speaking, he wants to run as a Republican. He wants to run, I think, kind of a MAGA, more conservative. It's interesting. Let's just say a conservative Republican. And I think he's still caught in the mold that conservative Republicans are anti-drugs. Great. Yes, they are anti a lot of drugs, and they're anti a lot of the societal problems that seem to go along with drugs. In some way, there's a correlation, not necessarily a causation. But the vast majority of the American public wants to decriminalize marijuana, right and left. By the way, I live here in Texas. I've said it before. I'm in Texas. Numerous MAGA Republicans are potheads that I know. Let's not bullshit ourselves. Everyone is smoking weed in this country, apparently. So I don't see the political upside. I don't see how it helps him fundraise. I don't see how it helps him poll anybody. It's not an issue that he's winning on the polls. What is it long term that this gets him? And in 4 more years, in 2028, as Gen Z is getting older and baby boomers are dying off, you think people give a shit about marijuana? This is, to me, it's an unforced error. It's why all you have to do is say, I don't support this, but the legislature has spoken on behalf of the people, and I accept that, and we're going to make it a regulated the best that we can to protect the people of Virginia and give them what they want. You could still clock your personal disapproval of it, and then you could still run against it. And then it wouldn't even hurt you running against it later on. You could just say, well, it passed the legislature. I could have approved it, but the people in my state believe in it. Their representatives voted for it. Who am I to say no? Don't get it. 4th obituary, I think. Truthfully, I don't. I don't think it's a big enough issue for anybody to really think about later on. We did talk about I briefly mentioned Biden's 26 million fundraiser in New York last night. $26 million in one night. I mean, he is crushing the fundraising. However, as people were leaving the fundraiser, young, presumably Democrats in New York were yelling, "Good luck. We're never voting for Biden because of Gaza. I hope you're happy with Trump." Listen, there is, for better or for worse, I have no idea, there is a strong opposition to Biden's support and the establishment Democrat support of the war in Gaza, Israel, back and forth, what's going on, whatever you want to call it, the war between Israel and Hamas. And this is, I've said it before, the border and Gaza are the only two things that can beat Biden. The economy's improving. You can talk about inflation all you want. I don't see it, and I don't hear people talking about it anymore. In Texas, even, I don't hear people talking about it anymore. They're not talking about inflation, right? They're talking about, oh, the economy's not great, whatever. I don't know. I still see people, including myself, buying avocado toast for $15. So maybe not. But I don't think people feel it anymore. They're not emotionally, it isn't as true for them anymore. Give it another couple months. If the economy continues to improve, I'm telling you, the only thing that can beat Biden right now, anyway, is Gaza and the border. And I think he kind of, honestly, I think he's neutered the border issue. I think if he continues to push, and I think even if he's very sly and very slick about a few things, even on some executive orders or some specific things, I'm telling you, the worst thing that the Republicans did was not pass the border bill. Because what they could have done was run on a victory rather than saying it's important and then acting as if it's not. Saying it's important and then showing that it's only important to them as a campaign issue, not as a actual government issue, as a people of the U.S. issue. That crushes so much of the argument of the border. And then now, just recently, by the way, they sent the articles of impeachment for Mayorkas to the Senate. I think that trial of Mayorkas could be a brilliant way to undermine the entire thing. I mean, that, by the way, is controlled by the Senate. It is controlled by the Senate, right? So Chuck Schumer can control it any way he wants. So political savvy there could really end up with some egg on some Republicans in the House face, and Donald Trump, who told them not to vote for it. And not just in the House, by the way, in the Senate. Because now every one of those people have to, in the Senate, Republicans, they have to sit there and consider the impeachment of the Homeland Secretary because of the border, even though they didn't vote for the bill that he asked for so that he could do his job, and they're impeaching him for not doing his job. I think that could be spun so well. So now back to the point, Gaza. Because Gaza is his base. Gaza, and it may be too young to be his real base, maybe. But it's certainly, people have talked about Michigan, the Arab community, or the Muslim community. I wouldn't say they're all Arabs either, by the way. But the Muslim community, and maybe not just Michigan, but Michigan is a key state. Going back to what I said about RFK, by the way, RFK could have really done something interesting in Michigan by choosing somebody else, maybe. But Biden is raising the money, and money matters, but I don't think it matters as much as we think it matters all of the time. I think it matters a lot in some ways and not at all in other ways. So I don't think that there's enough money in the world to get some people that believe that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, and that AIPAC runs the world and Biden is a puppet of Israel. I don't think there's enough money in the world unless you literally plan on, let's say there's 100,000 of those people. You plan on going to them and giving each one of them $1,000 to vote for you. But even then, you don't know if they're going to vote for you. It's an anonymous ballot, right? Some of them might, some of them might not. My point is, I don't think the money matters in this instance for this weakness. I think it matters in some other areas, but not for this weakness. So I don't think the 26 million is actually that big of a deal. I don't think the fundraising is that big of a deal. And the main reason is because Trump keeps himself in the news for free. It's the difference between bought and earned advertising, bought and earned branding. It's like bought and organic. You can pay for in like for us in a tech company. You think about Facebook ads and stuff like that. It maybe anybody out there knows DraftKings, or you see all the Prize Picks advertising, right? They're paying for all that advertising. If you're paying for it, you're paying for it, you're paying for it. That's cool. It's good. And we're very close. I highly support Prize Picks. This isn't a knock on them. It's an example because I see a lot of Prize Picks ads. They're doing a lot of advertising. That's great. But there is a huge difference between that paid traffic and organic traffic. Just it's there. And Trump gets it there. And interestingly enough, he gets it because of breaking laws potential. I mean, not allegedly breaking laws. Allegedly, he gets it because of allegedly breaking laws. It's been said ad nauseum, so I'm just gonna lay it in there right now and not say it for the rest of this episode. He is getting organic traffic by showing up to every one of his hearings and then having a press conference outside, which is newsworthy. I'm not knocking anybody who's covering it. It's newsworthy. And then that newsworthiness is him basically giving his campaign ad. Now, his campaign messaging, I think it gets a little squishy in those moments, because how does him being charged with a crime, I'm not someone who believes that affects my life or that it's an attack on me and my personal freedoms and liberties. I believe it is somebody who's being alleged of committing a crime and facing the charges. A grand jury indicted you. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know about that, but the point is still, my point is there is that he's getting the earned advertising. He doesn't need to raise a shit ton of money for ads. That's the point. He doesn't need to raise any money. He's still raising money though, right? Pay for his legal fees mostly, but that's all part of his campaign strategy, really. In a way, I kind of see why he's siphoning money away from the RNC into his campaign, into his defense fund. That's all feeding his campaign. So I don't think the 26 million matters that much. I think it's much ado about nothing in a way. You get Obama, Clinton, and Biden in a room together. Okay, great. It's a lot of people with money. I'm also not a huge fan of like closed door fundraisers, but whatever. So I think I think the more important or the more interesting aspect and potentially more important aspect is that that event is very similar to, what was it, the 68 DNC convention in Chicago, where young people were protesting outside of a political event. And it really could have been those people that were in the fold initially, right? I mean, young people gravitated towards the Kennedy Democratic Party. Johnson then, in this moment in 68, it really became stark how much he had lost that youth exuberance through Vietnam. And now Biden has lost much of the youth exuberance and I guess I don't know anybody who's ever exuberant, but he's lost the support of many youth and many in the Muslim community because of Gaza. It's not even his war, interestingly enough. So, and it's not like we're losing lives like we were in Vietnam, but still similar. Oh, I mean, interestingly enough, as we're talking about Yunkin, we have to talk about the bridge, the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore. As an aside, I actually used to live in the Baltimore D.C. area. This bridge goes over into so Anne Arundel County, I think, is on the other side of the bridge. I lived in Anne Arundel County, um, and I know the bridge well. Family actually even had a boat on the bay for a while, so I've taken the boat under the bridge, um, and um, and I've driven over the Francis Scott Key Bridge. So it's interesting. It truly is. It's really tragic what happened. There's so many storylines in it, though. So much politics. I mean, looking at many of the, I don't know if it was all of them. I don't know everyone who died. Sadly, I don't. Wow, this is turning into a death episode now that I think about it. The construction workers that passed away, I believe they were, and it's, in my opinion, a little odd to say that they were immigrants. I don't know that they were immigrants. It's weird to say that simply because they look like they're of some sort of Hispanic descent. They might not be immigrants at all. They might be 10th generation Americans. I have no idea. But some people are saying that some of them were immigrants, new to the country, working construction, building on infrastructure, building the country, literally building the country. Key infrastructure, a bridge over the Chesapeake Bay. This is like the Chinese building the railroads, the slaves building everything in the South and the North. And like the immigrants were building the country and they died in this tragic accident. And so it has this interesting through line. I just got done talking about the border being a key issue that could hurt Biden and can help Trump. And the American population, I think, there is a middle ground on immigration that everyone is open to. The vast majority, it's one of those 80% things. The vast majority of people are open to a middle ground, common sense policy on immigration. The way it is right now, the vast majority of people don't think it's common sense. That's it. It's really just the issue of common sense at this point. But there is this through line here that some of the people that were lost, and potentially all of the people that were lost, I don't know everyone that was lost, but they were immigrants in the country and working to build American infrastructure, or working on American infrastructure, building America. In addition, and I also saw, I guess, like Fox News did something where they tried to tie the border to the issue, and I feel like that kind of blew up in their face, or maybe not. Maybe it doesn't matter anymore. The thing I'd really like to talk about was there's this tweet from the White House or from Biden that says we have approved the first $60 million in federal funds to support Maryland's costs for emergency work. This is just the beginning of our financial support. Okay. Federal government stepping in a time of a disaster, an emergency. It's what the government should do, right? But I had a question, and immediately I had to go look in the comments because I thought many other people have these questions, right? And these questions I think have been asked since before, when Biden said in a press conference, we're going to step in and this will be rebuilt right away and blah, blah, blah. Shouldn't the insurance company pay for this? And maybe they will. I think there needs to be a clear understanding of how this is going to work before we just start throwing stuff around willy-nilly. So I think that this is something that needs to be addressed by, it might have been Pete Buttigieg, actually, that tweeted this. They need to come out and say this. They need to come out and say, ultimately, the U.S. government and the Maryland government and the Baltimore city government and whoever else, Baltimore MTA, which is like their kind of like Maryland Transportation Authority, covers like the bridges and the tunnels. They will never bear the cost. They will not bear the cost of this. A ship, and I understand it's an accident, right? I mean, they lost power. Okay. When I have an accident, it doesn't mean I'm no longer responsible for the outcome of that accident, right? So even if you have an accident, that's why you have insurance. The shipping company should be insured. My understanding is that Lloyd's of London insured the bridge. Makes common sense that we would have insurance on bridges and infrastructure and stuff like that, right? So there will need to be payouts from insurance companies for all of this. And that's what they need to come out and say. There's a narrative that's spinning right now that the government is going to pay this, and it's feeding into the narrative that those Democrats spend money on everything, blah, 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 blah. What about this? What about that? You're not being cost efficient. You're not being a good steward of our dollars. More taxpayers are going to pay. They even try to tie in there like another money laundering scheme or something like that. Just this is a narrative. Why do they never see the narrative? Is there no one in the government for each one of these departments whose job it is to understand how people are receiving their message? Because this is something you can get out in front of. You can say, yeah, and this tweet should say something like, we've now, approved the first $60 million in federal funds to support Maryland's cost for emergency work. This is just the beginning of our financial support, which will all be paid back from the insurance companies who are ultimately responsible for this cost. That's what the whole tweet should have said. Again, messaging, get it right. Understand that people are going to find any reason, especially people that are on the other side. But even then, the messaging gets out of your control and that spreads like a virus. So $60 million they've already approved. And I think it was a couple $100 million or even maybe $1 billion total that would eventually go. I think it was maybe a couple $100 million, but Biden said, we are going to cover it. It's going to be done, and it's going to be done very quickly. So I think that's great. Get it back up. If you look at some of the potential economic fallout of what's possible from this, by the way, we need that artery up and running. We need the infrastructure. And honestly, this could all come. I don't think we need to, by the way, allocate more money. There was already an infrastructure bill that was passed, $1.4 trillion. Take some money out of that motherfucker. Send it to them. Show that, say, this is why we passed this bill. We have these funds. That's how you do it. Own the narrative. Take control of the narrative. Interestingly enough, by the way, I will say, at the same time that people are spinning on and on about taxpayer dollars, Kansas City, Missouri residents, will be voting next week on a sales tax to fund new stadium projects for the Chiefs and the Royals. Royals are a Major League Baseball team, Chiefs are the NFL, the football team. What is the over-under that passes? It's either a yes or no that it passes, really, but what percentage do you think that that's going to pass? Now, the Chiefs just won a Super Bowl, right? They've won multiple Super Bowls. What percentage do you think they're going to, the over-under on that's going to be? I'm going to put in right now, I'm going to say it's going to be over. I'm going to say 68.4%. I'm going to say 68.4% of the votes will approve a sales tax to fund stadium projects for the Chiefs and the Royals, which will directly benefit billionaires that own those teams. So I'm not going to make any comments on the American people or on all of us and the way that we think and the way that we do things. How one moment we're worried about taxpayer dollars going to fix the Baltimore bridge and that's somehow a money laundering scheme. Yet at the same time, we can approve tax plans for billionaires that are not money laundering schemes either. I'm not going to make any comments. We'll see what passes next week. This is going to be front and center of what the vote is on this. And we'll see what happens. I'm going to leave it on that. I will say I've switched speeds a little bit. We've gotten out of the death. We've gotten out of the obituaries, the death of political careers and actual politicians and actors. And we're into sports. There are some teams that are dying in the March Madness, I will say. and some teams that were, there's always the upsets at March Madness, but I got to tell you, this next point is the epitome potentially of the death of a career and sports coming together. I'm going to wrap it all up for you with a beautiful bow. Boom. I got to tell you about my man, State Rep Matt Maddock, a Republican from Milford in Michigan, sent a message, I guess via Twitter, X, a little X action to he tagged the new Michigan Republican Party chairman, Pete Hoekstra, in a post on Wednesday night with photos of buses lined up on the tarmac at the plane with a message that those buses and planes were with illegal immigrants. Oh, this whole episode is coming together beautifully right now. I'm loving the way I did this. Totally accidental, by the way. I wish I had planned this out. I could actually take credit for it. It wasn't illegal immigrants. It was teams that are playing in March Madness in Detroit. Way to go. Way to go, Matt Maddock. I love the way people's biases influence everything they see. And now we know something about Matt Maddock. Now, what I want to know, I'd love to hear from our people in Michigan, is Milford, is it full on MAGA? Like, is that a tweet that MAGA people will like? He's a Republican from Milford. Or is it a moderate district where when they see somebody tweet something like this, so far of a representation of like not paying attention to life, right? And by the way, why do you not know that the March Madness games are happening, Sweet 16 games are happening in Detroit? Why do you not know that? Your state is hosting, and Detroit is hosting March Madness games. That's amazing. That's awesome. Americans, we love our sports, man. Get on board. What's your problem? Why, are you not watching the games? I mean, this is March Madness, baby. Even the president of the United States, Barack Obama, was proud of his March Madness brackets. Come on. Matt, what are you doing, bro? I don't know. And listen, if I lived in Milford and Matt obviously demonstrated that he doesn't know dick about sports or shit about politics, I would never give him money again, and I certainly wouldn't pay for him. And it has nothing to do with being a Republican. If anybody demonstrated the level of not knowing what the hell's going on in the world in one tweet like that, I'm done. You don't know March Madness is happening in Detroit? You didn't listen. I think I would have appreciated you more if you, and I might even support you if somebody came out with a tweet that said you use your position of influence to get tickets to the games. Come on, man. I don't know. I think this sums up all of it. The whole episode right now. You see that bow I just put on it? We have politicians that don't know shit about sports and don't know shit about illegal immigrants coming to their state or not. Not in this case. This was not a plane. These were not planes full of illegal immigrants and busloads. And he said they're police escort. Are you kidding me, man? You didn't stop to think, oh shit, there's a bunch of 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-olds getting off a plane wearing the same outfits, getting onto a bus and escorted by the police. Obviously, they must be illegal immigrants. What? Get the fuck out of here, man. Come on. Dude, how could you vote for that guy? Doesn't know what the hell's going on in the world. Doesn't know what the hell's going on in March Madness. That's the question. How could you vote for someone who doesn't know what's going on in March Madness? Come on. He probably didn't even fill out a bracket. My bracket's not looking too good. Damn you, Yale. All right. Those are the top points for the day. What is that? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points that we covered. Some sub points, but that's our 5-point Friday right there. Now I'm really excited. We do our over under every week, and I'm going to get to that, but we need to look back at our last one. It was the Show Me Big Easy Games contest that we were running on our platform. It was the Missouri Democratic and primary and the Louisiana Democratic and Republican primaries. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I actually think I'm right. This is what I have for Chris's selections last week. Chris had Biden in Missouri. The over-under line was 77.2. Chris had over. It was over 85%. All right. Good job, Chris. Louisiana, Biden's over-under line was 80.1%. Chris took the under on that one. It was 86%. Next time, Chris. That one you kind of shit the bed on, but that's okay. Then this next one. This is my favorite. Louisiana, Trump, 90.8% was the line. Chris took the over and again shit the bed, but by only 0.8%. It was actually 90% that Trump got in Louisiana. And actually, just to make sure that I'm 100% right about something, by the way, well, let me tell you what we're doing next. Next Tuesday is like our mini Super Tuesday. We have Wisconsin, New York, Delaware, Rhode Island, a bunch of things happening, a bunch of states. And I'm going to set the line here. I'm going to tell you what our lines are currently for each one of those states, although the lines move. So you might want to jump in the contest. Right now, we have Joe Biden in Wisconsin at 84.9%. 84.9%. You gonna take the over-under on that one? Ooh, I don't know. That's a tight line right there. And in Wisconsin, for the Republicans, we have Donald Trump. Ooh, 86.1%. That's an interesting. It's an interesting little play there, and I kind of, the way we set that line, I think I'm just gonna tell you is that you really got to ask yourself, what's Nikki Haley gonna do? I mean, she's been, as we talked about before, she's been outperforming as a suspended campaign. She got like 15% in, I think it was Florida. She got like 15%. Might have been Louisiana. No, he got 90. So I think it must have been Florida. She got like 15%. My point is, I think 86.1 is tight. I think she could get another 14% in Wisconsin, and that's it right there. That doesn't count like Christie or anybody else, right? So I think 80%, 86%, that's a hard line right there. I don't think she's going to get 14. The current polling, you can look at it yourselves, but so and then Biden, I think he's still facing kind of some of those protest votes, and I think he's lingering in that, like, 84, 85% is a really tough one for him, and I think he's gonna have a hard time breaking through that. So that's where we have him, and we will see what happens next. It's in our bank, so we'll talk about it next week. Well, guys, that is everything, ladies and gentlemen. That is all of the news for today. That is another episode. Just me this time. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it was fun. Hope you loved the way I put the bow on it at the end, and I just handed that fucking to you. I just, bam. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Hopefully Chris will be back next week. I don't foresee any reason why he won't be, but if he isn't, I'll be here and we'll do this thing. All right. Listen, I'll see you soon. Thank you for tuning in again to the Bully Pulpit. It's another one in the can. See you next week.